Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 9, 18. Translation and commentary. By Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Kuntyuvacha Namasye Purusham Tvadyam Ishvaram Prakrite Param Alaksham Sarvabhutanam Antar Bahiravasthitam. Can you show me God? The common question of the sinner, without considering that qualification is required. I don't believe there's any such person as Mr. Putin. Can you show to me? Well, we can show the photo in the newspaper. It's just to make up. He might be such a person, but he's not the president of Russia or whatever it is. So we can show pictures of Krishna and say this is God. And say, we can show, but you won't believe. Qualification is required to understand. Actually, in the case of Mr. Putin being the president of Russia, we don't accept it on qualification. We just accept because it's accepted by everyone. We don't question. What does it mean to be the president of Russia? That means he's appointed according to certain laws. He has certain privileges and authority. Previously they had kings who had more or less absolute authority. Nowadays I don't think there's any king in the world who has any authority whatsoever. And you can see the crown princess of Denmark or whatever it is, cycling around Copenhagen streets. So what's the meaning to being a king if the king has no power? President means they have some position, some authority. Just by seeing Mr. Putin, you can't understand what authority he has. I mean, there are so many people in the world and he looks like anyone else. I mean, he has his unique bodily features, but by looking at his form, you can't understand what power is invested in him. But then when you see how people respect him and that he can actually, by his decree, he can send troops here and there, have people arrested and so many things. About 3 years ago, the terrorists, they took over the cinema hall or whatever it was, and it must have been on his order that they were all killed, actually. So that's a lot of power, isn't it? To order these people should be killed. So anyone can say, I am the president, and some people might believe him. But he does, unless he actually is the president, he doesn't have the power of the president. And if someone says he's the president and isn't, he'll probably get arrested and punished for that crime. So in the same way, so many people may claim to be God or claim someone to be God. Srila Prabhupada often commented on the ignorance of Gadadhar Chatterjee being posthumously voted as an election, voted as an avatar known as Ramakrishna. Now, why do we accept Krishna as Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality? By qualification. Yeah, his qualification. Yeah, right. That he demonstrates all the symptoms of being Bhagavan. What are the 6 principal symptoms of Bhagavan? Does anyone know the verse? So, what are the 6 opulences, principal opulences? Let's say one at a time. Shvaryasya, of he who has wealth. Samagrasya, Viryasya, Yashasa, Shriya, beauty, Jnana, Vairagya. So Krishna seemed to have all these qualities in full, therefore he is accepted as Bhagavan. Who accepts Krishna as Bhagavan? Yeah, but who are you? Who cares what Nandi Mukhi says? Nandi Mukhi Devi Dasi. Yeah, say the verse. Very good. Translation. Say it loudly. So Param Brahma is supreme absolute truth. Param Dhamma. Pavitram Paramam. Bhavan means you. Purusham Shashvatam Divyam. Alright. Now someone may say that, well, you accept that. We accept Ramakrishna. And you can't understand because you're not qualified to understand. See, you're not purified enough. You didn't eat enough fish. Bengalis eat a lot of fish. Someone may say that, well, Sai Baba, he's Bhagavan. You see, he manifests ashes, sometimes even gold watches. And he's now manifesting his wheelchair Leela. He's over 80 years old. Well, from all these symptoms, we can understand that these people are not Bhagavan. As Srila Prabhupada said about Ramakrishna, he has given Bengalis a taste for eating flesh and becoming one with God. In the letter to Jayapataka Maharaj, when he cautioned him not to speak publicly against him, for eating flesh and becoming one. And in this way he has sent the whole of Bengal to hell. So this kind of pseudo-philosophy will appeal to people in the mode of ignorance. People who are very shallow will accept something very cheap. Srila Prabhupada's books are meant for intelligent people. Intelligence doesn't necessarily, you see, it doesn't mean necessarily a PhD, MSc, all this kind of thing. Or whatever you have in mind. What is your educational qualification? Whoever has spent time in India has been asked this question many times. In India, education is valued highly. That's because previously the Vedic knowledge was valued highly, but that appreciation of Vedic knowledge has become twisted into appreciation. So, Nandi Mukhi Devi Dasi, what is your educational qualification? You can say it again in Russian, so people... I guess if you heard it, everyone heard it. Yeah. So, is that education helping you to understand Krishna? Or is reading Srimad Bhagavatam helping you to understand Krishna? Actually, to learn to read and write and to think in some kind of ordered way, that is also required. So we can't say that mundane education is completely useless. But to think in a specious manner, and ordered but specious, that is not very helpful. Specious, you know this word? It means superficially, it appears to be genuine, but it isn't. Just like you say, a specious argument. Well, it means that they teach us, we learn values and ideas which appear to be very reasonable, but actually they're not. Now, it seems like a very reasonable challenge. Can you show me God? And if you can't just, click your fingers and God appears, and that proves, you see, you have no basis to believe in God. It's just blind faith. But it's a foolish question, actually. If we were to ask someone that, can you show me an electron? What's the diameter of an electron according to classical physics? Does anyone know? Technicians here. How many angstroms wide is it? Electron? No.
Electron.
No, cannot. It's That's a very good question. Very good question. That is a good question. Why do people believe in it?
Yeah.
Who knows the proof of the existence of electrons? Proof? What's the proof? No one can see. There are phenomena which can be demonstrated, and on the basis of that, the existence of electrons is accepted, at least in so-called classical physics. In quantum physics, it's not accepted. There are no electrons. There's no anything. It's just waves. It's all one. Classical Newtonian physics. Who has seen the air? Who has seen the mind? That which is subtle is not perceivable by the gross senses. That's being stated here. Ishvaram prakrite param. Krishna is so subtle that he is he's transcendental to the whole material manifestation, the whole material energy, to the whole material energy. He is alakshyam sarvabhutanam. He is not seen or not seeable to all people, even though he exists outside and inside of everything. Just like air. Air is within the body, air is outside the body. We can't see it. Of course, we may say that we perceive it in other ways, just like you can perceive the wind blowing against your face. But that according to the subtlety of any phenomenon, the more difficult it is to perceive. It requires training to perceive. The atomic physicist can understand, he can perceive the presence of electrons everywhere, but one who is not trained cannot. Krishna is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by all great authorities. E equals mc squared. Sri Einstein Uvacha. Who understands what that means? Small formula. Very big brain and a lot of training to even begin to understand what it means. But we accept because Einstein said so, and all other great authorities accept that. Now, if one becomes sufficiently qualified and is trained, then he can also understand not only that E equals mc squared, but how E equals mc squared. So in the same way, if one is sufficiently qualified and is trained, one can gradually come to appreciate how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we can see Krishna. Actually, we only see Krishna. There is nothing in existence without Krishna. Anta bahiravastitam. He resides within and outside of everything. But it requires the training to perceive Krishna. So that training is purification of consciousness. Atashri Krishna namadi nabhavad grahyam indriyahi. Krishna cannot be perceived by the gross, unpurified senses. Sevan mukhe hi jivado swayameva spurati adaha. But when one's senses, beginning with the tongue, are purified by the attitude of service to Krishna, then Krishna, his name, form, qualities, pastimes, they automatically manifest. They manifest by his mercy. So that training is required. There was one famous scientist who was for some time residing in Calcutta at the time when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was there also. So they were having a month-long festival at the Gauriya Math in Calcutta. And every day they would invite some important person to the meeting, and he would speak something like this. So some students of the famous scientist, Dr. Raman from South India, they were attending the program every day, the Gauriya Math program. So some of the students, they approached some Gauriya Math leaders and said that our professor, he's a world famous professor, he's living in this city and you're inviting so many important people to be daily the different chairman of the meeting. Why don't you invite him? So even though the devotees knew him to be an avowed atheist, one of them went to invite him. In the words of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was an adhiktata-vadi, one who, empiricist, just the simple translation, one who believes in what he can see. Only what he can see. So one devotee, Hayagriva Brahmachari, he visited Dr. Raman and found him in his laboratory. And he invited him, and Dr. Raman's response was, I don't believe in all this. So Hayagriva Brahmachari persisted a bit, and then Dr. Raman threw down the standard challenge, can you show me God? Now in the laboratory on one side there was a window, and it was on a higher floor, so it was overlooking the whole sprawl of the North Calcutta suburbs. And the opposite wall was just completely closed up. It was again the suburbs. There was not another room, but it was just it was the outside wall. No windows, but it was adjoining the air. So Hayagriva Brahmachari, pointing to that wall, he said that, can you see what is on the other side of the wall? So Dr. Raman said, well, if I had the proper instruments, I could. So Hayagriva Brahmachari said, well, can you make your students understand how to assemble and use such instruments? So Hayagriva said, well, just immediately, can you give them that knowledge? And Dr. Raman said, no, of course not. They'll have to come and study with me for several years, and gradually I can train them. So Hayagriva Brahmachari said, similarly, we can show you God, but you have to take the training. So then Dr. Raman said, well, anyway, I won't go to your meeting because I don't know anything about Krishna. I don't know what I will say. But the point is that a qualification is required to understand God. It requires purification. That means we have to follow principles. We have to take up seriously to the process of Krishna consciousness. There is a process of purification. Sometimes there are stories also, just like, for instance, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent a dog back to Godhead. There are instances of even without any qualification immediately. But Srila Prabhupada gave the example that there are two ways of getting a university degree. The standard method is to, first of all, become qualified by study to enter the university, and then to go to the university and study more. And even while at the university, you have to follow all the rules and regulations. If you study, if you're a good student, but you act like a hooligan, then they'll throw you out of the university. So gradually you're studying, and then then you're examined, and when it's judged that you're fit, they'll give you the diploma or whatever. Now another way that a degree may be awarded is an honorary degree. Even without going through the required study, one is anyway awarded a degree. So if someone thinks, well, I won't study, but I'll wait for the honorary degree, it's not a very good proposition. Honorary degrees are very rarely awarded, and they are awarded to people who they're already excelling in that field better than most of those who have studied. One other way that one can get a degree is by bribing, but that only applies in countries or administrations which are useless anyway. It used to be about 30 or 40 years ago that in India, if anyone got a degree, they wanted to study in America, higher studies, first they'd have to go and get the same degree again in America, because it was understood, or it was highly suspected, that they would have cheated or bribed to have got their degree in India. Well, you can't bribe your way into the kingdom of God. The standard process is to follow the standard system, just like in our sampradaya we've given the process by Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. It might be that someone, even without following all the rules so much, that their service attitude may be so strong that even they don't follow all Mangalarti or even chanting or anything, but they're doing so much service that anyway they go back to God. One devotee, he told one of Prabhupada's disciples, he told Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, I'm cooking all day, every day, and I don't have time to chant 16 rounds. Actually, he was chanting all the time while cooking. And Prabhupada said, then for you, it doesn't matter. You don't have to chant. He's still there, and I was in ISKCON Vrindavan, he's still there. He's very old now. He's retired from cooking. Vibhu Chaitanya. But if you hear that and you think, oh, well, I don't have to chant 16 rounds, that's misapplication. The standard process there, and it is a process of purification. Some years ago, our devotees in England, they made a survey of the public. Or they had it done by a company that does that kind of thing. England, because they distributed so many books and they wanted to find out how the public were appreciating them. And they, surprisingly, at least it surprised me when I found out, the book that was most appreciated was The Nectar of Instruction. And why? Because people appreciate it. It gives very clear guidelines that you have to control the senses, you have to stop eating meat and gambling and playing cards and watching TV and all this kind of stuff. They appreciate it. It's a clear delineation of what is clearly a religious path. Now, sometimes we think, well, we should, Krishna consciousness, the standards are very high, so we should make it easy for others to come. We might think that, well, no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no this, no that, no the other. No one will join. No people either. No one will come. So, yet people also. So, actually many churches in the West, they also thought, well, let's make everything very easy, then everyone will come. But sociologists of religion have found that those churches in America which have more restrictions, they're the ones that are growing, and the ones with less restrictions they're collapsing, they're folding up. Because if the preaching is, well, just do whatever you like and feel good and be nice, and people think, what do I need to go to church? I'm doing that anyway. Clear guidance. You have to do this, you have to do that. And then people say, oh, this is a path. This is a clear path. People come to a religion because they feel that I want to be a better person. I want to achieve the high goal of loving God or whatever their goal is. So if there are rules, follow this, follow that, then you feel it's a challenge. It's not very easy, but if you do it, you feel the effect of doing it. And if there's nothing to follow, then there's nothing there. It's like sometimes people ask, so what do you think about the followers of Sai Baba or this Baba or some other Baba or whatever? And I say, what followers? There's nothing to follow. You see, only very shallow people, as I was saying that before, people who don't want anything very deep, they like a kind of path in which there's nothing to follow, actually. Just like there's a story of the rabbit. Mrs. Rabbit said to Mrs. Tiger that, you see, I have 5 or 6 babies 3 or 4 times a year, and you only have 1 every 2 years. And Mrs. Tigress said, yeah, but mine are tigers. My children are tigers. And we'll eat all your rabbits. So, devotee is a great person, not a rabbit. We are in the parampara of lion gurus. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was known as Singha Guru, lion guru. Prabhupada, he is another lion. So we should also be lions. Lions don't give birth to rabbits. So we can see, are we followers of Prabhupada or are we rabbits? It means we have to be strong. To say, yeah, I'm a devotee of Krishna, but I drink a little beer now and then. We shouldn't be so fanatical. Be nice to everyone and don't call anyone a demon. There's nothing wrong with eating kami bread because it's vegetarian, I think. Probably. A devotee, no, I'm not going to eat that. How can I eat that? We can't offer it to Krishna. So you may have to go hungry or not eat the food that you like, but we have to stick to our principle. We have to take some difficulty to serve Krishna. People will appreciate that this is something genuine. Smita Krishna Prabhu was telling me yesterday, someone came up to him and said, "You're a Hare Krishna person? Give me a book." "How much?" He said, this is happening more and more nowadays. People are appreciating this is something genuinely spiritual. And anyone with a slightly awakened intelligence, if they're looking for spiritual life, they can understand that there has... So now, at least in Russia, our position is quite good. People are beginning to appreciate. People are beginning to appreciate, yeah. We can preach, we can tell straightforwardly. There are religious principles. We can tell, it's as Prabhupada always said, Krishna consciousness is a scientific process. Any intelligent person can understand that mercy, cleanliness, truthfulness and austerity, without this there is no religion. And these are destroyed by meat-eating, gambling, intoxication, illicit sex. Who can argue with this? We have a very solid basis. I mean, of course, there are so-called Christians who say that, well, we should eat meat because God gave us the animals to eat. You can see the film recording of Srila Prabhupada speaking with Cardinal Daniello, the number one Catholic in France at that time. And this Cardinal Daniello was trying to tell Prabhupada that God made the animals so we can eat them. Prabhupada was speaking in a level voice and speaking philosophically, but Prabhupada was slashing his... You see, Prabhupada was actually very angry with this rascal. That in the name of God, this man is promoting such sinful activity. He's actually a great offender to God. A few years later, that Cardinal Daniello, who was over 80 years old, died from heart attack in a brothel. It was a scandal. Not so much, because in France they don't expect, and French people hate the church more or less anyway, since the time of the revolution. It's... And that's another concern. They came to hate the church because the church leaders were just exploiting the people, taking money from them and not giving anything, really not caring for their spiritual uplift. Yesterday I was thanking you for the trust you placed in me by giving me donations. But if you came to find out that I was using the money for going to brothels, and you'd be very angry and disappointed. So actually, our Krishna conscious movement, it has philosophically, what is there to compare with Srimad Bhagavatam? I mean, actually, all these other so-called religions, they're childish. Actually, philosophy is suitable for children, maybe. This idea that God made the animals for us to kill them and eat them, it's actually demoniac. Or that the all-merciful God, if you don't get some holy water thrown on you and get baptized, then the all-merciful God throws you into hell forever without any chance of ever coming out again. They actually have no idea of who is God. So philosophically, if anyone is open-minded and interested, they can accept the Bhagavad-gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. This is actual knowledge of God. But our devotees also have to be Bhagavatas. Two kinds of Bhagavat. Ek Bhagavata Baro Bhagavata Shastra, Ar Bhagavat Bhakta Bhakti Rasa Patra. There are two kinds of Bhagavats. One is the book Bhagavat, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the other is the person Bhagavat, who is the receptacle, who is actually filled with bhakti rasa. So if we have actually imbibed this knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, then we must act according to Srimad Bhagavatam. More and more, all over the world, people are seeing how the governments are simply cheating them.
Yeah.
How this materialistic civilization that's being promoted all over the world is just horrible. More and more people are looking, is there any alternative? Such people, when they read Srila Prabhupada's books, can understand that this, they can at least get a glimmer of understanding that this is hope. I remember I first read one of Prabhupada's books, Krishna Book Volume 2. So I found it enthralling. And I knew there was a center of ISKCON. I knew where it was. It was a long way from where I was living at the time. It was a long way by British standards, not by Russian standards. So I thought, okay, I'll go and visit them. But I was skeptical that they actually followed what they said. I thought if they actually follow what they say, then I have to consider joining them. So if our devotees actually follow the principles which are given in Srimad Bhagavatam and become spiritually effulgent, then by doing so, and people will notice that these people are something special. All over the Western world, when our devotees first went on the streets chanting and dancing, people laughed at them. So when they saw them day after day in the winter, in the rain, in the snow, then they still thought it was crazy, but they began to respect that whatever it is, these people are dedicated. We were traveling in vans in Northern Ireland, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books in the late 1970s. And that time there was a lot of disturbance from there was civil unrest, the IRA, terrorists. So we would park our van at night in some field or something and go to sleep peacefully. And quite often in the middle of the night, the British Army patrol would they would come knocking, shining their lights, and what's going on here? And we'd wake up and the soldiers would be there with their machine guns. But when we told them what we're doing, that we're monks, we're traveling, we rise early in the morning, we follow these principles, we're vegetarian, and we don't smoke, we don't drink, they became actually very respectful. Because they were young men, the same age as us. They were following a disciplined life. In those days, no one lived any disciplined life. And they were living they were in a situation where they weren't very popular with many people, and actually they could be shot any time, the army people especially. So they appreciated that we were doing something to uplift the consciousness of the people, and actually at personal risk we were doing so. So we shouldn't think that let's make everything very easy and then people will appreciate Krishna consciousness. This easy-going, compromised life, there's no juice there. There's no approach to Krishna. There's no way to show Krishna that we're serious to achieve his lotus feet. But Prabhupada, he said that if we simply stick to these principles and go on preaching, then gradually people will appreciate it. So Krishna, he cannot be understood by any other process than that of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga Vidharatam, that comes up in 2 verses from now. It works, the process works, but we have to apply ourselves to that process. People sometimes they say, why am I not enlivened in Krishna consciousness? I don't rise early, I don't chant 16 rounds, I don't follow the principles, and I'm not feeling very Krishna conscious. I wonder why.
Yeah.
We have to have the determination to... First of all, we have to have the faith that by following this we will be benefited. Then we have to do it. If we follow, Krishna will help us. There will be many tests.
Yeah.
There may be very difficult tests. They may seem unbearable. But if we keep our faith in Krishna and go on with the process, then Krishna will help us. That is our visa to the spiritual world. Is there any question? Yeah. Question regarding the class.
In the Bhagavad-gita, it's mentioned that the soul is agile, it's unborn. how the soul is aja. It means that it's never born, but then how it appears. At some point of time it appears, or it does not appear. What's the meaning of unborn?
Well, it's just like in this material world, in any one universe, the sun always exists with the sun rays. The sun always exists and the sun rays always exist. But still the sun is the source of the sun rays. So Krishna exists and the souls, they exist, and Krishna is the source of the souls.
How should we educate our children? Sometimes there's no opportunity to give them to Gurukul. So devotees have
There is no opportunity.
There is no opportunity. So devotees have to bring their children to kindergartens and to schools. What to do in this situation?
I suggest you ask those devotees, especially those whose children have taken up Krishna consciousness seriously as they've got older, ask them. There's no fixed formula because people are different. And even the children born, they may have themselves a very strong desire to be Krishna conscious, or in some cases, not at all, not very much at all. One devotee in India, his grandfather is a Prabhupada disciple. His father is a disciple of Gopal Krishna Maharaj. When he was young, he was pushing his father, send me for studying Sanskrit. His father he himself wasn't so enthusiastic for that, but he himself wanted that. And now he's also initiated by Gopal Krishna Maharaj, and he's absorbed in Shastra. He's a special boy, no doubt. So these are the kind of things to be discussed in Namhata seminar also. In practical scenario that's facing so many devotees. Sriman Pandit, his son and daughter are both in Krishna consciousness. They've both grown up and desirous to be initiated. Then Bhutatma, Prabhu's sons, they're working now and they're in Krishna consciousness and gradually coming into it more. So there are devotees here who have brought up their children in Krishna consciousness. It's a great challenge, no doubt. So this is an important topic which I request this can be incorporated into the Namhata discussion. Srila Prabhupada's sutra-like or succinct guideline was that if the parents themselves act in Krishna consciousness, then the children will naturally follow. Anything else?
In the purport it's mentioned that living entities are not infallible. But in Bhagavad-gita 15:16 it is said that there are two kinds of living entities, fallible and infallible. Should we understand this?
Well, many statements in Shastra and in Prabhupada's books have to be understood contextually. Sometimes Atma is understood to mean mind, sometimes understood to mean body, sometimes understood to mean soul, sometimes understood to mean the Supreme Soul. So a living entity, the basic nature of the jiva, here this statement corresponds to the jiva being tatashta shakti. Tatashta means can go either way. Mother Yashoda is never going to be seen in McDonald's. She's not going to fall down. You and I are Tatastha Shakti. She is of the Swarup Shakti, Antaranga Shakti. So this is to be understood contextually.
Usually in the language, in Russian language, soul is feminine, but Srila Prabhupada calls soul he in his purpose.
What's the question?
Какой вопрос? So what is soul, feminine or male?
In English, the convention until recently was to refer to gender neutral statements.
Nouns.
Hmm?
Nouns.
Yeah, gender neutral nouns referring to people as he, because there is no gender neutral. It's either he or she. So the convention in English is to say he.
Oh. So
Until recently, now they say he or she, which is cumbersome. Ontologically, in relationship with Bhagavan, the soul is feminine. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with the class. Any more questions about the class?
in your book, Glimpses of Traditional Indian Life, you mentioned that in Bengal, the culture, the traditional culture.
Is anything to do with the class?
Yeah, with Ramakrishna. Is very prominent still. Then how could this Ramakrishna introduce these bad habits of eating flesh and other things?
Well, culture is one thing. Philosophy is often something else. There are so many Sampradayas are there in Bengal, giving, in a very cultured manner, giving respect to people who are bogus. So culture to be maintained has to be based on proper philosophical understanding. The Ramakrishna's teachings appear to be, superficially might appear to be something very good. And it doesn't matter what you eat, it's just the level of consciousness that's the important.
Согласно ему учению.
Vivekananda said that. He was a worshipper of Kali, and Kali worship, they take flesh as prasad.
These are what's the beginning? This one? The beginning of the sentence.
He was a worshipper, Ramakrishna.
Yeah.
In that book, I was mostly describing the Vaishnava culture, which has many similarities in the Shakta culture. The Shakta culture is they worship Durga, Kali. So in Bengal, the traditional religious culture, there are two main streams. One is Shakta and the other is Vaishnava. I was describing the Vaishnava culture. Shaktas mostly eat flesh. From long time, not something new, but Ramakrishna popularized it, legitimized it, supposedly. So be careful when people say that, well, you don't have to follow 4 principles, you don't have to chant 6, you don't have to do this, that is all right. Yeah, agents of Kali, just like Ramakrishna.
If you see lust and greed in others, does it mean that I have these qualities? Does it mean that I have to purify my heart by more strict following knowledge and
It's got to do with the class.
practice?
It's not to do with the class,
Yeah.
is it? So leave it.
Okay,
we'll finish there.
Там закончим.
And we can distribute some. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.